So now let's look at some other ways we can isolate the sections of the spine to really focus on feeling movement just in that area and controlling movement in those particular areas more. And for this we're going to come into a tabletop position. So we're in our tabletop position. If this is tough for your wrists, it does work to have your forearms down. Probably even better if you have your forearms on some blocks or some large books where you can get your whole forearm on the brick or the book, and that can be helpful as well. And then we're just going to start again by feeling the S-shaped curve of the spine. So it's what we call neutral spine, and it's the feeling that your back is flattish, even though it isn't. It's got these little curves in it. But if you feel like your head is lined up with your upper back, it's lined up with your pelvis, and just kind of breathe there. See if you can find some nice sideways breathing into your ribs. And this is kind of helps us to start practicing feeling the S-shaped curve of the spinal column. Neutral spine. Okay, and then we're going to focus on moving the neck. And just as we did sitting up, just let your chin pull in towards your chest, into flexion. So you're rounding just your neck spine. Try not to let the upper back join in. And then pull your chin forward. You can lift your face away from the mat a little bit and then let your chin move forward. Just a bit to feel that feeling of extension of the neck spine, and then dropping down again. Chin to chest. Forward, lifting your head up a bit, and a little bit of a lengthen forward through the chin. Okay, and then looking down at your mat, pulling your face away from the mat again, just going to rotate the face to one side. And see if you can do that without side bending as well. So we're just isolating the rotation. So you start looking down, and then your face turns to the side, your head stays in the same position. To the other side. A couple of times. And this is a really good strengthener for the muscles of your neck as well. They're actually getting a little bit of weight-bearing load in this position. Okay, back to center, and then we're going to add a little bit of side bending as well. So we'll start with chin to chest again. Just flex the neck spine, trying not to let the upper back join in. And then looking back at the mat, lift your head up, turn your head to the side, and then lift it up as if you're looking behind you. Adds a little side bend. Back to the side, look at the mat, chin to chest, back to center, lift your head up, rotate to the side, lift your head up and look behind you. And then back to center, and just move your head around a little bit. You could let your head hang down, lift it up, and just aware that you can focus on feeling just your neck spine moving on its own. So this is the control we want. Okay, and then just take a little breather and give your hands a little circle after that. So from the neck, we're going to move into the thoracic spine. And to help isolate that, if it's comfortable for you, if possible, we're going to come in this kind of kneeling position. There's things you can do to make this position more comfortable. If it bothers your ankles, if the ankles feel too stretched, you can put a blanket under your ankles. That can ease that. If it just feels an uncomfortable position for your knees or your hips, you could put a blanket or a block behind your thighs, and that can change the angle and make it more comfortable. And then we're bringing our hands down to the mat. If possible, bring your belly button down towards your legs. So we're trying to get quite low through the lower half of the body and kind of feel your pelvis rooting down towards your feet. And what that's going to do is kind of lock the lower part of your body, the lumbar spine, so that when we try and move the thoracic, the lumbar doesn't join in quite so much. The other part that tries to join in, of course, is the neck, because it has loads of movement. So we're going to really focus on trying to keep the chin a little bit down so it's not the neck doing the movement for us. Now when we isolate sections of the spine, particularly thoracic and lumbar, you don't get as much movement out of them because most movement, the big movements of the spine, come when you move it all together. So this will be a small movement, just to warn you. So hands on the mat, shoulders pull down, sink your sit bones into your feet, and then we're just going to visualize the sternum pulling in again, as if you're just rounding that upper back a little bit. Now inevitably a bit lower down does join in, but you're just trying not to as much as you can. And then imagine that you're pulling your sternum forward towards the mat in front of you, towards your fingertips. Pull your hands towards your knees to help pull the sternum forward and up a little. So you'll notice I just lifted my head up a bit then, but I'm not going to let it go any more than that. I'm focusing on this part, pulling forward. And then from there, again, I'm going to pull the upper spine in by pulling my sternum in, and then pull it forward again. And generally by the third one, you find it's a little bit easier to isolate. So already I'm feeling I'm not moving my lumbar quite as much, and now I'm not moving my neck quite as much. So it takes a little while to feel and get used to it. So this is your brain mapping this part of your body and learning how to control it. And this is really important if we want to be able to control how the spine moves in more complicated movements, and for it to join in movement automatically in our everyday. Last one. Okay, I can feel that a bit more. Okay, so that's one position that can help you to feel just that thoracic spine, often the stiffest bit, moving on its own. Okay, we're going to move down to the lumbar spine, and for this we're going to bring our head down to the floor, arms down to the floor, and cradle the back of your head in your hands with the elbows down. If it's not so comfy, you can put a blanket underneath as well. And then we're going to push down through the elbows and round up into the upper back. So you kind of push your shoulders a bit, your body a bit forward, but your shoulders down away from your ears. You're trying to get some rounding in your upper back. So hopefully that's going to lock out the thoracic spine a bit so it can't join in. The neck spine certainly can't join in, so we can isolate the lumbar, yeah? So it's just as we did in the other movement, we were locking out one bit to focus on the other bit. So now it's the lumbar we're focusing on, so I'm going to start to lift my sit bones up, tilt my pelvis forward, hip bones drop down to the mat, and I can feel my lumbar spine dropping down. And then I'm going to lift my hip bones up and try and flatten out my lumbar spine, lower back. And again, it's a smaller movement because the sections on their own don't move as much. So I'm trying not to let the thoracic join in. And I'm trying to kind of memorize this feeling. So really going into how it feels. To extend the lumbar spine, that's when it drops down. And flex the lumbar spine when it moves up. So flexion and extension are basically what we've done with thoracic and the lumbar, and that's the most important movement. If you've got good flexion and good extension, that will carry over into your rotation and lateral flexion, side bending and rotating. So we really want to spend lots of time refining our flexion and extension. Okay, so that was the lumbar. And then we're just going to put it all together into our cat-cow, which we do all the time. But having isolated the neck, the thoracic, and then the lumbar, let's see when we put them all together into a whole spinal movement of cat-cow, how that feels. Are you a bit more aware of the different sections and how they're joining in together? Okay, so we're coming into our tabletop position. We're going to start the articulating of the spine from the lumbar, from the lower back, or from the pelvis actually. And so you start by the pelvis tilting back, belly button lifting up, rolling up through your lumbar, and then up through the thoracic, and then the cervical spine just relaxes all the way down into the weight of the head. Back to the lumbar, lifting the sit bones up, so the tailbone lifts, the sacrum tips down, the lumbar tips down, squeezing muscles along the spine, the thoracic lengthens down and forward, and then this time the cervical spine joins in and lengthens, extends forward. Full extension of the spinal column. So let's just do one more like that, a little bit faster. Rolling up to flexion, and rolling through to extension. And there's something about doing this after having separated out the pieces. It just feels more feelable and a bit more fluid. Feels like I'm really able to connect to my spinal column in a smooth, fluid way. So I hope you found that too. See how that goes and let me know. Thanks.